What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Danielle Hallen and I'm back with another true crime video. So in the last year, I put a really heavy focus on speaking about cases that have led to legislative changes on my channel. Cases from the past, cases from the present, things that are ongoing, and I feel like we were all able to learn so much from discussing those cases and realize how important our voices are in making positive changes in the true crime world, even if it just seems like we're one person screaming into the abyss. So happy that I made the decision to do that, and I fully intend on continuing this through 2024 so we can continue to educate ourselves, have these conversations, starting with today's video. This was a suggestion that was sent in by one of you. I haven't seen a whole lot of coverage on it, and the moment I started reading into what happened and what this family is fighting for, I knew that I had to cover it. Today, we're speaking about a heartbreaking case involving the murders of 24-year-old Mchale Busch and her son, 16-month-old Noah McConnell, back in 2021. So this is a relatively recent case. Mchale and Noah were senselessly murdered by a known sex offender, and the lax sex offender laws in Canada where this occurred meant that Mchale and her family moved in next to this man, and they had absolutely no idea at all. They had no way to protect themselves whatsoever. And since their deaths, Mchale's husband and Noah's father has fought so hard alongside friends and family to pass something called Noah's Law, hoping that changes in legislation will protect people from ever being hurt like his family was. So let's get into the details. Mchale was born to Stuart and Karen Busch on February 13th, 1997 in Alberta, Canada, and she was raised in Camrose alongside her baby sister, who she was apparently known for being very, very protective over. Mchale loved her family. She spent a lot of time with them. She spent a lot of time with her group of friends. She was a very social person, and most of the time you could find her on the ice. Ice skating was hands down one of Mchale's favorite things in the world. As she grew up, she went on to attend Our Lady Mount Pleasant High School, and this is where she ended up meeting Cody McConnell, who would eventually go on to be the father of Noah. They met in the summer of 2014 at a high school party, and as cliche as the saying goes, I'm still gonna say it, the rest was history. Mchale and Cody hit it off, and according to every single interview I've seen, within just 3 dates, they both knew hands down, this was who they would be spending their life with. And the couple stuck together through everything, through graduation, through life changes, through growing up, and over the next 7.5 years until Mchale's death, they had a beautiful life together. Mchale, after graduation, had gone on to work at Camrose Association for Community Living, which is an amazing nonprofit, is dedicated to assisting those with disabilities, and it was here that she discovered her true love for helping those in need. So by 2017, she made the decision to attend Norquest College in Edmonton to study nursing. She did a phenomenal job. This was a natural thing for her, and so after her graduation in 2019, she went right back to her community living position, hopeful for the future. And shortly after this, she found out that she was expecting a baby boy. Mchale and Cody were ecstatic about this. They were so in love with each other. They were so ready to start the next chapter in their lives. So in the middle of an ice skating rink, again, Mchale's favorite place in the world, Cody ended up proposing. Their lives were filled with preparing for a baby, preparing for a wedding. That's so much to look forward to. And on April 18th, 2020, their son Noah was born. This was a challenging time for the couple. The pandemic had just started. There was so much that was unknown. They were first-time parents. There were no visitors allowed. I'm sure many of you have either experienced this or could imagine what that was probably like. But from everything that I gather of the couple, they took every situation and made the best of it. So while everyone was locked down and the world was going crazy, they dove deeper into their own world for sanctuary. Cody and Mchale, after leaving the hospital, spent every moment together loving and raising their son and watching him grow. And by all accounts, Noah was such a special little boy. He was described as being an easygoing baby. He was always happy, and that's not an exaggeration. Everyone said that Noah rarely cried, but when he did, somehow it always ended in him laughing or with a huge grin on his face. He could never stay upset for very long. And if you've ever been around someone that's like that, honestly, that kind of energy is just contagious. this. But as life goes, there were more challenges. Shortly after Noah was born, Cody ended up being diagnosed with MS. And this forced him to take a medical leave. Again, uncertainty hit them like a ton of bricks. But according to Cody, quote, "Mchale was my rock, Noah was my best friend." They went at this headfirst together, and eventually they worked through it, and Cody was able to go back to work. And because there were so many things happening in the world, Mchale decided to stay home with Noah, while Cody went on to work in the pipelines. Now, this job required him to move all over Canada. He basically went wherever he was needed, so they decided to get a small trailer together, and they all traveled anywhere Cody needed to be. And it wasn't an ideal situation, but at least they were together, and as per usual, they made the best of it. Until finally, in late August, when there was a huge opportunity. Cody's job was going to be taking up more of a permanent location. And so this allowed them the ability to get an apartment in Hinton, Alberta. Now, Hinton is a small town 3 hours west of Edmonton. It's just outside of Jasper National Park. Mchale and Cody were thrilled. They would have a lot more space. They had somewhere to start putting down roots, and they were able to move into their apartment by early September. But in Cody's own words, quote, "My dreams turned into the biggest nightmare." September 16th, 2021. Early that morning started like every other. Cody, Mchale, and Noah had actually spent some good time outside together, and it was a bit of a monumental moment because 16-month-old Noah had just messed around with a hockey puck for the very first time, and they were just beside themselves over how cute it was and how fast he was growing up. And after this beautiful morning spent together, Cody headed off to work while Mchale and Noah stayed home. Later that evening, just before 6 p.m., Cody headed back to the apartment after a long day of work, excited to see Mchale and his little boy, but neither of them were anywhere in the apartment. This was unusual. Mchale and Noah were usually equally as excited to see Cody at the end of the day, so they usually were always there. And if she had gone out somewhere, she would have said something to him, but she hadn't. Not only that, Noah's stroller was still inside of the apartment, neatly folded up, and Mchale's car was still in the parking lot. Cody proceeded to yell Mchale's name out all over the apartment, checking every single room that they could possibly be in, and he stumbled across yet another alarming detail. Uncooked, half-prepped food was sitting on the kitchen counter. To him, it seemed like Mchale had started to make a meal, and for one reason or another, she was interrupted halfway through. But at this point, Cody was trying his hardest not to expect the absolute worst, so he continued his search. Maybe they went to nearby parks, maybe they went on a walk, just something. So Cody went to the few parks that were within walking distance of the apartment complex to check and see if maybe they had gone there, but there was still this nagging feeling that something could be wrong, because if they had gone there, Mchale would have taken Noah's stroller. And sure enough, when he went to check these places, Mchale and Noah were nowhere to be seen. Cody then checked around the apartment complex itself, and still there was nothing, and so at this point he decided to call his friends and family to see if maybe someone picked them up and she just forgot to mention it, but no one had seen Mchale or been with her all day long. So at around 6 p.m., Cody decided to call into RCMP and report that Mchale and Noah were missing. Now, in that flurry of calls Cody had made to his friends and family to see if anyone had seen Mchale, he had called his friend Jared, who managed to make it to the apartment complex before police to try to help Cody locate Mchale and Noah. Together, they began a small search. They double-checked the apartment, walked around the apartment complex, and eventually started knocking on doors to see if anyone had any information. But unfortunately, this seemed to get them nowhere. And when RCMP finally arrived, Cody and Jared were told to sit tight in the apartment while they conducted a search of their own. And so over the next few hours, RCMP searched the immediate area. They were checking the apartment complex, the parking lot, and they also went door to door for tips. And this eventually led them to the door of 55-year-old Robert Keith Major, who lived directly next door to Cody and Mchale. He actually shared a wall with their home. And when he was asked if he had any information at all, he had something to offer up. Robert Major claimed that at some point earlier that day, he just so happened to witness Mchale running from the apartment complex. But there was absolutely no mention of Noah, where she was headed, if she ever came back. That was all the information that he had. So authorities decided they were going to go to the apartment manager to try and check the surveillance themselves to see if Mchale really did run from the apartment complex for some reason. Maybe these cameras caught where she was running to. Maybe they caught her going to someone's car to be picked up, and they wanted to see if Noah had or had not been with her when she allegedly ran off. So authorities are looking at this surveillance, and they were not able to see at any point any evidence that suggested Mchale actually ran from her apartment like Robert Major had claimed. Instead, they saw something very, very different. It was Robert Major on surveillance, and he was carrying 2 large black trash bags out of his apartment, and he threw them into the apartment complex dumpster. Authorities began to fear the absolute worst and started to think that maybe Robert Major was involved in wherever Noah and Mchale went. Because why on earth would he have any reason to lie about seeing Mchale run out of the apartment unless he wanted authorities to think something else had happened to her and lead them elsewhere to look? Now, meanwhile, Cody and Jared had been anxiously awaiting in the apartment for any sort of updates from RCMP, and Jared's girlfriend Bailey had joined them, and they were all just sitting there hoping that Mchale and Noah would just walk through the door. This was some big misunderstanding. But when there was finally a knock at the door at 2 a.m., it wasn't Mchale, but RCMP. They explained to everyone that they needed to do a search of the apartment, so they would all have to pack up and head out to stay at a nearby hotel. But in reality, RCMP had actually just made a horrific discovery, and they needed Cody to be somewhere else while they continued their search. By early the following morning, Cody was at the police station being questioned, still having no idea where Mchale or Noah were, until RCMP finally broke the devastating news of what they had found the night before. After seeing the footage of Robert Major, police had gone to the dumpster to investigate what had been in those 2 trash bags that Robert had tossed out. And inside of one of those bags was the little body of Noah McConnell, along with a handful of other items, including Mchale's cell phone. After they made this discovery, police had encouraged Cody to leave, knowing that they were about to storm Robert Major's apartment to look for Mchale, that they had just found his baby boy. And once Cody was gone, that's exactly what happened. RCMP showed up at Robert's door demanding answers, and this led to a search of his apartment, and there in the bathtub, face down and naked, was the body of Mchale Busch. Both Mchale and Noah had likely been murdered at the hands of their neighbor. Heartbroken doesn't even begin to cover it. These 2 innocent lives were lost, and for what? A time that was supposed to be a new beautiful start for a young family had been destroyed by this man that they didn't even know. You guys, they had not even been at this apartment complex for 2 full weeks. And as the family and community grappled with this loss, RCMP really had no answers. There was no connection between Mchale, Noah, and Robert other than just simply being neighbors. So that morning, Robert Major was arrested. Now, initially, he was charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of offering an indignity to human remains. But as more information was slowly revealed, those charges changed to 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of interfering with human remains. And in the following days, Robert Major's history came to light, and it enraged everybody. This was such a preventable situation, but flawed laws, like I already said, and lack of protection by the government, or at least the inability for citizens to even protect themselves due to those flawed laws, led to this unthinkable double homicide. He actually had a very lengthy criminal history with over 24 criminal convictions, and 2 of those had been violent sexual assaults. Back in 2006, Robert Major had been charged with sexual assault, but the details are nowhere that I can find them. All we really know is that this is the first charge publicly out there. I don't even know if he was convicted or served time, but in 2012, he did it again. According to reports, for one reason or another, somehow, some way, Robert took a toddler from the care of this toddler's babysitter under the guise of taking this little toddler out on a walk. But instead, it turned out Robert Major sexually assaulted this toddler. Absolutely disgusting, but it gets so much worse. Robert ended up being found guilty, and he was thrown in prison for this, but he only served 3 years. Only 3 years for what he had done. And as he was serving those 3 years, he was accused by another inmate of, you guessed it, sexual assault. It was beyond evident that this man had a serious problem, and even being thrown in prison was not deterring him from it. Now, because of his crime, he was ordered to go through a sex offender program while incarcerated. And this sex offender program basically ensured that he received mental health care, he was regularly taken to church, and Robert Major did go through this program and he finished it, and so he was simply released. So I'm sure you're saying, okay, they saw signs of improvement because of this program, they trusted him to be in society, but unfortunately that is not at all the case. Robert had actually been evaluated while incarcerated as well to see where exactly his mental state was standing in regards to these crimes that he had committed. And it showed he wasn't really in a great place, because Robert admitted openly that sexual assault aroused him, and he did it for thrill purposes and had a great time doing it. So when he was released into the public in 2016, which apparently they could do nothing about, Edmonton police had to legitimately issue a public warning about this man, saying that it was believed he was highly likely to reoffend and a serious danger to women and children. If you're having to issue public warnings about someone you're releasing into society, there should be some sort of, red flag there saying you probably shouldn't be doing that. They ended up placating the public, saying that there were all these court orders in place to help protect everyone. Robert was not allowed to live near children or women. He was not allowed to live near schools or parks, pretty much anywhere that women and children were going to congregate. He also had a curfew, I guess, to ensure he wasn't out in the cover of darkness. He also wasn't allowed to leave Edmonton at all without getting direct permission from a judge. And then two very strangely specific things, but very telling things. Robert couldn't purchase undergarments for women and children, and he couldn't possess any material at all depicting children in a state of distress. So from the outside looking in, these are some pretty strict orders that he would have to follow. And from a legal standpoint, over the next few years, he did follow all of these orders. I can't find anything that states differently that he broke them or had any issues. I don't know how frequently he would have to meet with something that's the equivalent of a parole officer, but I guess everything went fine. And per law, and this is what gets me here, once those court orders end, or once a sex offender isn't convicted of an offense for a year, their names are removed from the sex offender registry list. So by, I think it was June or July of 2020, despite what he had done, despite molesting a toddler, because he had gone through all the court orders, he just completely was able to drop off the radar. And it is so wild to me that no matter what you do, how many times you do it, if you make either of those marks, nobody has to know the secrets of your past. Absolutely just mind-blowing. And so this allowed Robert to move to the apartment complex where he would just slip back into his habits and unfortunately escalate them to murder. People heard this and were infuriated. By the time of Robert's bail hearing, Cody, family, friends, and community members were fighting for some sort of change. They all showed up to the Edson courthouse for the bail hearing and to hold a silent vigil for Mchale and Noah. Cody's employers even gave his coworkers the day off, so they all came still dressed for work for the little bit of time they had, carpooling together to show their support. They took it as a time to speak on changes and laws that may have saved Mchale and Noah's lives.
For everyone, there were no words. 20 minutes of silence encompassed the family of a mother and child that RCMP say were killed by their neighbor in a double homicide.
Love you, buddy.
At the center, Cody McConnell, a blue blanket wrapped around his shoulder that once belonged to his son, 16-month-old Noah, and the engagement ring he gave 24-year-old Mchale Busch on a chain resting on his neck.
They made me whole when I was broken, and now they're gone.
The family says community members deserve to know who is living next door.
We've already got a vision. It will be Noah's Law, that we're going to protect other families from going through this.
Tuesday's crowd was filled with oil and gas workers. Midwest Pipelines shut down its site for a few hours so workers could attend in support of McConnell during Major's first court appearance. Levi Rule, McConnell's foreman, says it was an unprecedented step.
Everyone said they've never seen anything like that before, right? So pretty impressed with the turnout.
We come to these towns to work and we bring our families with us, and this could have happened to any of us.
McConnell calls the death of his partner and baby boy 100% preventable.
My family ended up in harm's way for no reason. Nobody was there to protect us.
Cody said, quote, "They made me whole when I was broken, and now they're gone because the justice system is broken. And all I want to do is make the change that will help other families so they never have to experience the loss of a child, the loss of their wife, to such inhumane things." And it was at this point that Noah's Law began to take shape. Now, eventually, Robert went to trial where he pleaded guilty to his charges. Obviously, as you can see so far, because of the differences in the justice system here in the United States and the justice system in Canada, I don't have a whole lot of information about this case. So I'm unsure if there was ever a total confession or exactly what happened during the initial parts of this case. What I do know is that at the trial, there was a agreed upon statement of facts released describing the believed events of that day. That morning, after Cody had gone to work, Mchale and Noah had gone to a nearby park, which was something that they loved doing together. And when they returned to the apartment complex, Mchale ended up being approached by the manager of the building. Since Cody was working the pipelines, he would come home covered in mud head to toe, and his shoes had left a lot of large tracks through the hallway. So the manager wanted to point it out and kindly asked Mchale to pick it up, and she profusely apologized and said that she would take care of it immediately. Authorities believe that when this conversation was happening, Robert was likely eavesdropping in from somewhere nearby and saw it as a perfect opportunity. After having this conversation with the manager, Mchale headed into her apartment to make Noah some lunch and put him down for a nap. Around noon, Mchale had actually called up a close friend of hers while cooking, and according to this friend, everything seemed completely fine so far. They were having, a casual conversation, and then in the middle of that conversation, there was a knock on Mchale's door. It doesn't seem like Mchale ever really addressed the conversation that she had with the person at the door or really said anything at all about it, but her friend overheard a male voice. This voice offered to clean up the muddy mess for Mchale that the building manager had brought up, since Mchale was a busy stay-at-home mom. She had a lot she was trying to deal with, and Mchale obviously agreed to this kind gesture and thanked this man before returning to her phone call and then ultimately hanging up to go on about her day. And authorities stated they believe the male that came to her door was likely Robert, scoping out the situation even further. Mchale sent her last text message at 2 p.m., and from this point on, not much is certain. For some reason that remains entirely unknown, Mchale ended up in Robert Major's apartment as Noah took his daily nap. Authorities have speculated a handful of different scenarios, but the most agreed upon is that Robert managed to lure her in there. Unfortunately, it seems that no one will ever know. But the next part, I'm assuming, is from a partial confession, though, again, I can't confirm it because I'm unsure how else they would have gotten the next few details. According to RCMP, within moments of Mchale entering Robert Major's apartment, he attempted to manually strangle her with his hands, and he continued this attempt unsuccessfully for 10 minutes. 10 minutes, before he ultimately gave up and grabbed a cable instead. Once Mchale was no longer alive, he put on gloves and proceeded to sexually assault her. Then he dragged her into his bathroom and placed her in the bathtub. And then this part, for some reason, again, that no one has been able to figure out, Robert Major proceeded to cut out some of Mchale's organs. And those organs have never been found. They weren't in those trash bags. They weren't in the apartment. From my understanding, he didn't go anywhere else. Again, we don't know why or what he did with those. After he finished his sadistic killing of Mchale, he then decided to go and get Noah, who had been peacefully sleeping in his own apartment. And why? I literally just want to scream, why? Why not just leave him there? It is speculated that he believed Noah had seen something, or maybe would tell authorities his identity, that he was harboring information and knew that Robert had taken his mom. It's believed he saw Noah as a threat and decided to end his life as well. So Robert went over to their apartment, grabbed Noah, brought him back to his own apartment, and proceeded to suffocate him with a sock and a plastic bag. He then put Noah and Mchale's belongings into the trash bags that he put in the dumpster. He put the body of a 16-month-old little boy in the dumpster like it was trash. Mchale's father said, quote, "It's inconceivable to endure something like this. How can it be that simply moving in next door to someone can be so dangerous?" At Robert's sentencing, he did tell the court that he felt he should be put in jail for a long time for what he did, explaining that he didn't even trust himself and he would be scared of himself if he ever were to be released, which shows that to some extent he acknowledged what he was capable of. But in the same breath, he also went on to describe himself as a good person. So Robert was ultimately sentenced to life in prison with no parole. So at the very least, he is unable to harm anyone else ever again. Granted, I hope they are keeping some sort of eye on him, given his history of sexually assaulting other inmates. And this leads us to Noah's Law. Noah and Mchale's family have worked so hard on Noah's Law, and it was honestly amazing to read them speak about it. The hope is that this law will change the sex offender registry into more of an active position. From the way that it's described, and I obviously have no personal knowledge of it because I don't live there, so I'm taking this information from what I've researched. It seems that the registry is there and it somewhat serves a purpose, but it seems that there's not much enforcement going on behind the scenes. And there are just multiple different areas that could use a little bit of changing. Noah's Law would basically make it so that the registry would monitor these high-risk offenders closer to help protect the public. People like Robert Major, who was released from prison with an emergency public announcement. And they would do this by requiring them to update their address and personal information on a more regular basis, check in on them on a more regular basis, and it would also require, and this is key to me, lifelong monitoring for repeat offenders and high-risk offenders. If this long-term monitoring had been in place when Mchale and Noah were murdered, Robert would never have been able to move into that apartment complex. He had been able to get wiped off the sex offender registry and move into an apartment that was surrounded by parks, surrounded by schools, surrounded by kids and women. So not only is it an issue that he was no longer on the sex offender registry list, but also, unlike here in the United States, the public does not have access to the sex offender registry list in Canada. Only police have access to that. That is it. So Mchale and Cody didn't even have the opportunity to check before moving in to see if there were any sex offenders in the area to protect themselves and find a different place to live. And as someone living in the United States where our registry is public, I have used it numerous times when scoping out apartments to live with my kids, when scoping out areas to take walk with my kids. Such a valuable resource to give me peace of mind, and it makes me feel like I have some sort of control over positions that I possibly put myself in. And while all sex offenders don't reoffend, I think the public should absolutely have the option to protect themselves where they can. Someone from the community safety program in the area that this occurred said, quote, "Somehow you have to strike a balance about how you keep somebody safe in the community and keep the community safe at the same time." This is a very nuanced situation, and honestly, it got me thinking about a lot of laws that we have personally looked into in the last year together that have stemmed from specific true crime cases. And I feel like it's very easy when emotions are so high and you are trying to protect everyone from ever going through what you had to go through. These laws are often hastily created to and end up casting a very wide net. And unfortunately, when you're trying to pass legislation, those lawmakers will think of absolutely everything to push back against it. So while there are such great intentions behind it, unfortunately, I think that's why lawmakers fight back so hard against it, because they bring forward all of these what if scenarios. And it's so heartbreaking to see a family just trying so hard to do good have their law completely shut down. So seeing that Noah and Mchale's family are not letting a single detail go without thorough thought to keep balance in mind, it makes me so hopeful that this will fully pass. As of October 2023, the petition the family started to have Noah's Law put in front of lawmakers finally reached the House of Commons. And now it is basically up to the public and the government to continue to push this law through to passing. So if you are in the area and you want to learn more about it or to support it, it's known as Bill C-336. I'm hoping to see more updates in the future. I've already said it so many times, but I will say it again. The deaths of Mchale and Noah were senseless and absolutely preventable. And my heart aches for their family and the future that they could have had. Make sure you follow along for updates. I know that the family does have a Facebook page where they post about where Noah's Law is standing, the current ways in which you can help, the different places you can call or send letters or send emails or different petitions that you can sign. But right now, it really just feels like the public needs to know about it. The public needs to help push this law further, help make sure that this doesn't happen to anybody else. But that's all that I have for you guys today. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Mchale and Noah's story. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below to become a part of the Hallen fam so that we can hopefully bring them home together or bring them justice together. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.